Here we go. Tonight we are reading another Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Spooky Stories. This one is Science Project. There once was a boy named Victor, and Victor was not a happy child. This was a long time ago, before video games and TV and all of that. So the only thing that Victor had to entertain himself with were books. And since his parents were both doctors, the only kinds of books they kept in the house were ones about science and medicine and stuff like that. The other thing that made Victor sad was that his parents wouldn't let him have a pet. They told Victor he wasn't responsible enough to take care of an animal and that they'd end up doing all the work. And even when Victor promised he'd feed his pet and take it outside 3 times a day, the answer was always no. The only thing that really made Victor happy was school. He was a smart kid from reading his parents' books, and his science teacher said if he studied hard, he'd be famous for his work one day. So when it was time for the middle school science fair, Victor was really excited. He worked for a whole month on his project, and he hoped it was good enough to win first place. But Lizzie Leggett won with a volcano project that Victor was sure her parents had helped her with. So Lizzie walked away with a first place ribbon, and all Victor got was a lousy honourable mention certificate. Toss. From that moment on, all Victor could think about was next year's science fair. He read his parents' books from front to back, trying to come up with an idea for a new project, but he couldn't think of anything that would really knock people's socks off. One day, when Victor was looking out his back window at the cemetery behind his house, he got an idea. To be honest, it was kind of a twisted idea, but Victor knew if he could pull it off, his project would win first place in the science fair for sure. Victor did experiments in his attic every night to get ready for his science fair. His parents thought he was spending too much time by himself and wondered if they should have let him have a pet after all. 1 year later, it was finally time for the big science fair, and Victor brought his project with him to school. And if you want to know where Victor got the materials for his science project, let's just say sometimes it's better not to ask too many questions. Can electricity bring the dead to life? Even though Victor had been working on his project for a whole year, he didn't know if it was going to actually work. But he knew if he didn't lose to Lizzie Leggett for a second year, if it didn't, he'd lose to Lizzie Leggett for the second year in a row. So when the judges gathered around his project, Victor crossed his fingers and threw the switch. Gzop! It's alive! All of Victor's work had paid off when his creation came to life, and this time Victor got the first place ribbon, and Lizzie was the one who had to settle for the honourable mention. Groan, clomp, clomp. On the walk home, Victor was feeling pretty good about himself, but he kind of wished he'd thought about what was going to happen after the science fair was over, because now he didn't know what he was supposed to do with his project. Victor thought maybe he could ditch his creation at the cemetery, but his science project wouldn't take the hint. Victor picked a stick off the ground and chucked it over the cemetery gate, but his creation thought it was a game and brought the stick right back. Pant, pant, pant. Then Victor started having fun with his science project, and the two of them played for hours outside, and Victor found out the thing his creation liked the most was to have his belly rubbed. Who's a good boy? You're a good boy. Oh, yes, you are. Thump, thump, thump. Victor told his parents about his first place ribbon at the science fair, and they were very proud of their son. And even though they were a little concerned about where Victor got the materials for his project, they knew that sometimes it's better not to ask too many questions. Scratch, scratch. Victor asked if he could keep his science project as a pet, and after he promised to feed it, take it out 3 times a day, and they finally gave in and said yes. From that day on, Victor and his new pet were the best of friends, and they never spent a day apart. Victor became famous just like his science teacher predicted, and he was always in the paper for one thing or another. Victor Frankenstein makes nanotech breakthrough. Each year Victor got a little older, but his pet didn't age, and when Victor finally died, his loyal sidekick was right there by his side. Whimper. Over the years, people forgot all about Victor Frankenstein, but his pet became kind of famous. People called him Frankenstein's pet or Frankenstein's monster, but after a while they just called him Frankenstein, and he was okay with that but it made him kind of miss his old friend. "What's shaking, Frankie?" Frankenstein didn't know what to do with all his free time now that Victor was gone, but he knew he couldn't really do anything without an education, so he went to school, starting with the first grade. And even though he was bigger than the other kids, they treated him like he was one of them. Frankenstein was a quick learner, and he actually skipped a few grades. In middle school, he entered the science fair and took first place, just like his friend Victor. And if you're wondering where he got the materials for his project, let's just say sometimes it's better not to ask too many questions. Arf.